Okay.
So, like the first student is from my section, but then the other ones would be like from. So you get to see like a big picture of that.
Good to go. So I will hand back the hosting. You can click the record button to play again, start recording, and that'll do it.
I think I have to be host to be able to record again.
Sorry, say that again?
I think I need to be host
Yes. Yes. Host.
to be able to record back. Okay. So
Right.
now it should be recording and at the same time live YouTube. So we are good. Okay, before I leave, I put someone like a host.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Victor.
Bye.
Bye.
Can't believe we're at final reviews. This is so exciting.
Yes, it's been fast this semester.
Yeah.
But it is so good how the students have been going through all the exercise and everything.
Yeah. I saw some of the work at maybe midterm or whatever the last review was. And it was looking great. I'm excited to see what they've done since then.
Yes, it's been a big change because from the beginning that they do this little exercise, how they have to move to the bigger scale. Yeah. But I think they've done an amazing job, like moving on. So I don't know if we have to wait if we are everybody here. I'm going to check. So maybe we can start.
Pankaj, are you zooming in from the US or from India?
No, I'm sitting in New Delhi actually.
Wow. What time is it there?
Almost 8 p.m. It's 5 minutes before 8.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we are under a very severe lockdown because the case counts in India and in New Delhi are horrific. So we have
the news. It's shocking to see.
Yeah, we have so many friends who are very sick or in hospital or dying. It's been very, very serious. So yeah, but anyway, I the more time I spend with students, the better off I am and happier I feel. So I'm glad to be in this room.
Javier here, Lorena.
I'm going to post now the concept board, the chat. Hello, Rodrigo. I just see you. Okay.
Hello, Andrea.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So probably for Wendy and Lorena, so they can take a look at all the drawings.
I think we are missing Brandon, but it's the first one.
Of course, you can ask the students because they
So whenever he's ready, we can start.
something else.
Are you Madrid, Rodrigo?
Yes. I'm joining from Madrid.
So we have a little bit of everywhere here. Good.
Trying to remember my concept board login. Passwords.
So the only one missing is Lorena, but I think we should start so we don't get behind because, you know.
Hello, Brandon.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I think you are first. If you
I
are,
am. And I also have a quick question. I'm also the timekeeper. So during other students' presentations, I got an email saying that I should announce when they have a minute left for the presentation and a minute left for the external reviewers. Should I just shout that out or should I hold up a sign that says 1 minute? Or how should I don't want to interrupt anyone's presentations.
okay, so I'm going to time you so you don't have to worry during your presentation.
Oh, okay.
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 And then whenever I'm going to leave to the other rooms to see the other students, I will leave you like the host of the room and
Okay.
you time keep. So time 7 minutes for the presentation of the student. And whenever the time is over, you can unmute your microphone so they can hear the beep beep. And all the students have like
Okay.
1 minute more into the 8 minute. It should be
Okay,
almost
got it.
7
Okay.
minutes. And whenever 1 minute is over, by the 8 minutes, they should finish. And the reviewers, they have 18 minutes until the 25. So we have time to switch because it's a half an hour for each student.
Okay.
Presentation and
I
feedback.
just wasn't sure if I should shout out like 1 minute. I didn't want to interrupt people's presentations, but I can send them on my phone.
Okay, yes, that will be fine. So
Okay.
all the students, whenever they hear the beep, they have 1 more minute to go.
Got it.
And they should be finishing. And then the reviewers, they have around 20 minutes to do it. Okay, the comments.
I have a question
Yes.
before we start about concept board. Could you tell us how it's organized? Like, is the very bottom row this group, or is it?
So in each row, it is the section of the teacher. So it's going to be a little bit hard for you because, for example, Brandon is in my section. So in section Bardon, he will be there, but they are not in order for right now because they are split on the rooms.
Okay, I just wanted to understand that. Thank you.
You're welcome. In the chat, I have put the names. So before every name, for example, the next one, Jeremy, is Lohar room. So in the row Lohar, you should be able to find him. Okay, so Brandon, I mute myself. Whenever you are ready.
Sure, yeah. Share my screen. Is that working?
Yes.
Okay,
You should put full screen.
okay. Good morning. My name is Brandon Israel. I'm in the second year undergraduate program, and I am in Professor Andrea Bardon's section. And this is the proposal for the urban block project entitled Green Home NOLA. Green Home NOLA is a proposal to create an urban block that facilitates a mainly outdoor and green lifestyle while emphasizing a strong sense of community. It intentionally focuses on the relationship between interior and exterior to create hybrid spaces that make a space in between four walls feel directly connected to natural elements on the site and to encourage interaction between the residents living on the block. Inspired by the sloping peaks and valleys of mountain ranges, this urban block promotes shared resources and contact with the natural environment. A few key aspects of the horizontal, vertical, and sectional homes designed earlier in the semester stuck out as significant themes to continue within this project. The horizontal home featured a dispersed plan which blurred the lines between private space and the shared public space. The fusion of outdoor collective areas with the private realm became a priority in the urban block. The sectional home featured the layering of heights to create a larger feeling within a small confined space. The vertical core in the project was inspired by that in the vertical home, featuring straight staircases met by platforms at each level. Working on the New Orleans porch assignment while conceptualizing ideas for the urban block made clear the significance of outdoor space attached to the home. The sense of freedom provided by access to the outdoors can make a home feel bigger and enhance the overall living experience. The precedents used were a Toronto housing project by Big Architects, a firm based in Denmark, and an office complex based on a mountain range built by Israeli architecture firm HQ Architects. The way in which vegetation overflows from unit to unit in the Toronto housing complex inspired aspects of the housing in the urban block project. The way it creates a sense of shared space by penetrating physical boundaries influenced the final design of this urban block project. A priority in this project was to design homes in which the exterior portion was perhaps the most important part of the home. Inspiration was taken from the urban gardening movement, a method in which densely packed urban areas have been able to become home to lush greenery on repurposed roofs many stories in the air. Intentional cascading roof patterns allowed room for green spaces to take shape above the ground floor. The housing blocks, all facing the same direction, allow them to create uniform sunlight exposure and shaded areas throughout the day. It also helps to ensure the vegetation growth will stay uniform and not overwhelm one portion of the block. The first set of diagrams explains the strategy employed when deciding how to arrange the built environment on the site, starting with the established restraints on the left and ending with the blocks for building on the right. This set shows all the open green space and then differentiates the area established as a main program area that encourages spill out from these spaces. The ground level floor plan presents how program is introduced to the site directly under housing units. The main program block in the middle promotes an indoor-outdoor flow between a community farmers market and outdoor garden. The program blocks to the north and south feature space for restaurants and bars that open up and encourage spill out and outdoor interaction between people living on the urban block. The level 2 plan shows cuts at a level that show which blocks have program below them and which do not, as is shown by the second typology appearing in some blocks and the first in others, which I'll get into right now. This is the first typology, which is the biggest one, and it's about 36 feet by 36 feet. And because it is a perfect square, there are other iterations that feature more bedrooms and can easily be manipulated and customized depending on the lifestyle that will inhabit the space. It features an indoor courtyard with glass sliding or accordion doors that allow for the main shared indoor space to be transformed into an indoor-outdoor hybrid space. The second typology stacks directly on top of the first, but features an entirely outdoor courtyard that takes up about a third of the bottom floor plan. It has a bigger outdoor space in the first typology, but a smaller interior. The hole in the middle allows for the tree and other vegetation in the first level courtyard to pierce through and grow onto the second and even third floor terraces. This opening allows each of the 3 outdoor spaces to share sunlight, rainwater, and vegetation. The third typology goes right on top of the second and features 2 smaller but split outdoor spaces and the smallest indoor spaces. And I have a quick animation. You can see that. This animation shows how the orthogonal units stack directly on top of each other that allow for the repurposing of these roofs. This north-south section shows how the orthogonal nature of each unit relates to each other and creates a cascading effect. Inspired by irrigation and farming techniques, the downward flowing nature of the housing units promotes shared vegetation, sunlight, and other natural resources. More specifically, it utilizes rainwater in a more sustainable way. By allowing water to drain down onto the other units and their terraces, more benefit is taken from the rainwater before it drains to the ground. It allows for the natural environment to flow from top to bottom, penetrating the built environment over time and fostering a sense of connectedness between the units stacked on top of each other. This east-west section presents a cut that flows through the program area and into the community garden space. It also shows the vertical core, which features an elevator that arrives to a platform at each floor and a staircase that meets these platforms as they wrap around the elevator. This interior perspective emphasizes the importance of the courtyard in the first typology. The accordion glass doors make the inside feel uplifted and directly connected to the natural environment. This ground level perspective portrays a playful take on the outdoor experience of the block. This perspective of the terraces shows ways neighbors can choose to interact with each other due to their proximity if they choose to keep their borders light and open. The built environment of this project encourages the sharing of natural resources as well as interaction with the outdoors. It pushes the notion that the exterior of a home can be more significant to one's lifestyle than the interior. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Brandon. Perfect timing too. So whenever you want, and reviewers, as you want, in order.
I have a quick question, Brandon. I understand how the residential units stack, but it was clear in your section that some of them have an additional ground floor program underneath them. Can you remind us, is that the markets you were talking about?
Yes, so let me go back to the ground floor plan to kind of explain that better. So this is the ground floor plan, and basically what you can see is that some of the units have that first typology, which is those are the units that don't have the program level below them. Yeah, so the units that have the program level below them are 10 feet higher than the other units. That makes that more clear.
And then the courtyard of the first residential unit, like that, the stuff that's growing in there is just, there's like a layer of soil. That,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. I see.
Since you have the plan up, can you also just quickly walk us through how the upper units access their apartments? Where are the stairs? Where are the walkways?
Sure. So the walkways come directly off of the sidewalk from all these directions, and you basically enter right into this vertical core, and you can get in the elevator, or you can take stairs that have platforms wrapping around the elevator, and you can access each unit going in that way. Or I don't know if you can see my cursor, but you can climb up these stairs, platform, and access each unit via either the stairs or the elevator. It might make more sense in this section. In this section, you can see here, you can enter from the back there and then access each unit.
Brandon, I may start by just saying, like, one, thanks for going first. I know that's a hard spot to be in, because you're in part explaining your project, but also helping us understand the larger goals and agenda. And I think it was very clear, like the method of stacking. It makes sense. It's logical. It seems like those spaces would function well and be lovely to be in. But also it's telling to me, or interesting to me, that you're always showing us the aggregation that you're doing from a certain vantage point that shows us the step down effect, and we never see that backside, just a flat big wall. And it this project feels very much like it has a front and a back, and I wonder about the back and the quality of that space and what it does as a communal neighborly setting. And so I'm wondering, do you have ideas about the backside and how it's activated, or are you hiding it from us because you don't yet know what's happening there?
I'm definitely not hiding it. There's been kind of a lot of thought put into the back of that. Because they're all kind of facing the same way, the front is way more significant. And so with only 5 to 7 minutes to present, those are the things I definitely wanted to prioritize. But I mean, yeah, the back of the units really are kind of more of a flat facade, obviously with windows that poke into each of the units. But I do like, one thing that I wanted to add, or maybe thought about adding, was kind of showing how sunlight and shadow kind of penetrated the area, and how that differed at different times of the day, whether it was hitting the back of the units or the front of the units. But yeah, there definitely was thought put into it, but just I prioritized the front a lot more.
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess as a follow-up comment to that, I would encourage you, like you've established a system and a logic, and it seems to work well in some ways, but also like I kind of want to mess up the hair a little bit, or like add a little bit of variety to this logic that you've established. And so I think to me, the next step in this project would be to encourage you to think about the backside and how you can start to push and pull and animate that back bit too, so that they're in dialogue with the buildings behind them and not just kind of stacked in regimented rows.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on that actually, and add a few more comments. First of all, thank you. Your drawings, seem reasonably clear. And what I wanted to ask actually is, if you were aware, I'm sure you've looked at a lot of the precedents before arriving at the stepped garden scheme. One of the ones I'm thinking of is by Charles Correa in Mumbai, the LIC housing, the Life Insurance Corporation housing, where there was a very clear mandate to create kind of a social and economic mix. So obviously the largest apartments were, like in your case, on the ground floor, and those people had cars. And then the first floor apartments were slightly smaller, and you walked up a flight of stairs. And the second floor was subsequently even smaller, like a studio apartment, and that person may just own a bicycle. But the point he was making is that in the role that this kind of mixed economic housing juxtaposed in the same block played was really important for the health of the city. I wonder if any of those motivations are also driving your design. The second follow-up question, which I do want you to talk about a little bit, is I understand the unit and the intent behind every module, but I'm just wondering, like, as you stack the modules one behind the other, if I live in the third floor of the second module or the second floor of the third module, does something change for me? Do I have a different vantage point? Or, as was just pointed out, am I looking at the back wall of somebody else? So would there have possibly been some kind of variation that happens as these units move across the site? Especially, there's a difference in occupying, I would assume, the corner unit, because you have two sides open to the city versus occupying a center unit where you're locked in on both sides. So I only ask because all your modules are identical. And I wonder if there was a thought behind the evolution of that as it went across the site.
Right. So to answer the first question, which, correct me if I'm wrong, was about kind of how I was implementing this kind of stepped housing idea into the urban grain of New Orleans. I mean, originally I was inspired by eco communities, kind of more sustainable communities, and the first thing I thought about in New Orleans was flooding and water usage and vegetation, how to kind of not slow that process. But if you're going to get all this dumping of rainwater, instead of it going right to the ground, why don't you have that trickle down and share between all these units, and then as a byproduct of that, kind of encourage this growth of vegetation and this overwhelming growth of vegetation on the site. So I kind of started doing research, and I looked towards irrigation and farming techniques, and I looked at kind of these stacked sort of platforms and kind of how certain areas of the world were doing it. And so I thought I should integrate that into my housing project. And so that's sort of how I got this idea of stacking these units, and then incorporating kind of having the vegetation allowed to be overgrown and then piercing it through the middle of all the units. So basically, like, rainwater is kind of starting from the top. If it puddles all on the top, it doesn't just go straight to the ground, and it doesn't immediately flood kind of the area. It kind of gives more time for that water to get out and then trickle down onto the other units, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I thought about that. And the second question was about the diversity of the different units. So yes, all of the units kind of are identical. I went through different iterations of it, and I think kind of the main diversifying factor of living in one module versus the other is the views that you have of the site. Different certain modules have views of the street. Some have different light at different day, and then some have views of the main program space. So some, again, are directly on the street, and then some are more surrounded and huddled by the other housing blocks and other modules, and they have more of a view of the interior of the block as opposed to the street. That answers that question.
Yeah, I'll pick up on previous comments as well. Well, first of all, I think it's amazing. So I have to congratulate you being a second-year student and showing this amount of sophistication in the tools you use in controlling all the scales from the single unit to the aggregation to the connection with the granularity of the city. I think this is amazing. Now, said that, I think there is a lot of sensibility in your first horizontal home, treating the capillarity of the circulation and how you like meld together the public and the private, and how the, let's say, public circulation, quote unquote, public circulation enters or penetrate in the fabric of the cells. I think that was very sensitive and very well done. I wonder if I think the next step, in my view, to work on this stacked version will be to treat this capillarity with the same fluidity that you seem to apply in the horizontal home. I don't know if you feel the same, but it feels that in this aggregation you work with less freedom than in the horizontal. Obviously, it's much more difficult to work with within this density and this systematization of the project. So, but I think the challenge is in there. It's in noticing how much freedom you work with in the horizontal house and trying to apply this freedom to this aggregation. Now, and this thing applies to the circulation. For example, you treat your original scheme of bands parallel to the river is super clear, but maybe in the ground floor it could be a bit different. No, I understand that for the houses maybe it's much more clear treating it like that, but for the ground floor it could behave with another logic, and then you'll have terraces on the second level, for example, that you could use to introduce exceptions into the system, for example. No? And another degree of exception, for example, is the elevation or the section that you have on the screen right now. No? How can you introduce more sections than the piercings that you have on the ground level? No? You could introduce these voids not only at this level but at different levels. No, and on the same voice, but on the first level, the same voice, but at the level of the roof, like introducing a bit more these exceptions. And the last comment, it's related to this is one of the first things that struck me from your plans, being this project so much directional, like looking all the residents towards the south. In your plans, it doesn't show. No, you said. Well, I thought to use these north walls as just walls pierced with windows. You're speaking now a lot about this water cycle and vegetation and kind of understanding the whole community as a kind of ecosystem that integrates vegetation. Well, I think you should understand the south terraces as a kind of thermodynamic device. Obviously, it's a kind of solarium, no? Kind of hard to control in summer in New Orleans, but most of the seasons could work as a kind of thermodynamic device. And the same thing could happen with the north, no? It could be understood as a buffer of shadow, of fresh air for the summer, full of vegetation this kind of vegetation that grows without the need of sun, and you could use it to refresh through cross ventilation and to establish this polarity in the solarium in the south and the kind of shadow buffer on the north. What I feel is that this wall of the north should be a thick wall full of I don't know, programs and vegetations should be thick, I think. Congratulations in any case.
Thank you so much.
One other suggestion, Brandon, I agree with all that's being said, and you guys have packed a lot into a semester. Like I'm
Yeah.
amazed how far you've gotten.
Thank you.
And if it's like vegetation and micro ecosystems and things like that is something that you're really into and wanting to push forward, I would encourage you to look into, I would encourage you to be specific about what types of things you're growing here and what it takes to make them happy. So for instance, like if the courtyards, those seem to be a pretty tight but potentially nice space. And so you may look at some plants like the pond cypress, for instance, which is a fast-growing version of a cypress tree that it doesn't reach out as far as like a bald cypress. It's a little more contained. And so, if you start to think about that particular tree and what it needs to thrive, then maybe that starts to suggest, it likes a really wet environment. So then maybe all the roofs of those units slope in towards the courtyard and the water's captured there. And you start to create you start to let the specificity of certain types of plants or what you're trying to create inform some more detailed moves in your project. And if you start to do that, maybe that's not the type of tree, maybe it's a different type of tree that you imagine there, but those start to influence some more like the next layer of development in these projects. And that may also be counteractive or that may run counter to this idea of having communal spaces below, like markets or whatever, because maybe that doesn't work for a water retention zone above in terms of weight and things like that. And so maybe you have different, I guess what I'm encouraging you to do is to think about the development of these spaces and be more specific about what might be happening where, and that might add some variety of approaches to how you're developing these different little stepped nuggets. There could be drier ones and wetter ones and north-facing ones and south-facing ones, and that may start to just add some nuance to this system that you've established.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Thank you for that suggestion.
Well, I think if that's all, I'm going to move to the next room. Brandon, I leave you like the host of the session whenever I leave,
Sounds
so
good.
it doesn't close. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Emily, Pancas, Rodrigo, and for sure Brandon for starting the section. And good luck for the next students. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for the feedback and suggestions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brandon.
I don't think I fully understood the setup, but this is fun. So Andrea is going to go and then someone else will pop in.
Yes, I think Guillermo is coming and I leave the room. Okay, bye.
Well, what do we have to talk about for 5 minutes? Rodrigo, did you say you're joining us from Madrid?
I'm in Madrid, yes.
Yeah, and how
I'm
are
joining
things,
from Madrid. Sorry?
how are things there? Are things starting to open up again?
Yes, it's normalizing. How is there in New Orleans?
Yeah, it's the last few weeks have felt like things are starting to open and
Normalizing again.
yeah.
Yeah, it's almost back to normal, it feels like.
A lot of people here have both shots, and it's starting to get back to normal. Like there's
Good.
people playing music outside and people gathering to listen and stuff like that.
Nice. I lost that. I missed that.
Yeah.
But when I was there, the close off got me like in the first month or second month. And so I didn't have the opportunity to go to a jazz concert.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, I'm actually going to try to hear that there's someone playing outside later today, like at 6.
Nice.
We'll see.
Great. So you are in a kind of hybrid mode, or students are doing physical class like on site, or is
Yeah,
half and half?
the students may be able to speak more about that, but for I was teaching 3rd year, and we would meet 1 day a week in person and then 2 days a week on Zoom. How has it been, you 2nd year crew?
It's been pretty good. I mean, at first, like way earlier, obviously last semester we couldn't really interact that much in studio, but now it's pretty free flowing and everyone's wearing masks and most people have either had it or are vaccinated. So people are pretty comfortable kind of, talking to each other and helping each other out, which is really nice.
Yeah.
So I just want to have if I understood correctly, all the sections have the exact same site and the exact same program?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, so everybody has the same urban block and the same restraints. And then the assignment was basically to develop on top of that. But everyone has the same, yes.
Okay.
And there's 3 existing buildings on site that you're not supposed to touch, right?
Yes, yes.
Have you all been to the site? Have you done site visits?
I haven't. I think some students have. I think pre-COVID there was a field trip that everyone took, but I think I know a few students did. I didn't go, unfortunately. But.
Yeah.
I went yesterday morning to the coffee shop on the block and did a little walk around the area to get myself ready for today.
Nice. This is right by French Truck, right?
Yeah, it's the block with French Truck on it and Charlie's Steakhouse.
Oh, yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Emily. Hi, Rodrigo.
Hello, Guillermo.
How are you?
Good.
So we have now Jeremy, right? Jeremy Goldberg. Really glad having you all here. We're looking forward for your feedback. Jeremy, you have the floor.
All right, can you guys see the screen?
Got it.
Yeah.
Is it moving? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see it.
I've had issues in the past, so just let me know if you guys can't see anything or if it's not working, and then we'll try and troubleshoot. All right. Hello, my name is Jeremy Goldberg. I'm a 2nd year undergrad student in Guillermo Lockhart's section, and my project is called Waterline Collective Housing. So here is the main axonometric of the project. We will come back to this, but you can see that my project is mainly divided into 4 cores. Starting with my horizontal home, this home is divided into 3 kind of pieces. There's the kids wing of the house, or the one with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom on the left. Then in the middle is the courtyard that separates the 2 wings. And then there's the public areas along with the largest suite in the back. And then these sections show cutting through the various parts of the house. Here's a perspective of what that would look like, the 2 wings of the courtyard. Then we have my vertical home. And it's essentially broken into every floor is a different program. So 3 of them are bedroom and bathroom setups. One of them is the dining room and kitchen. And then the main floor you walk in on is the living room area. And you can see in the sections that you actually enter on the middle floor, and you can go down and that bottom apartment kind of has a garden at the bottom, and then you can go up to the other bedrooms from there. And then for my sectional home, this is also divided into wings. So you can see that the first one is that living room. You enter and there's a living room and then a bathroom and stairs up, and you can go either way, either to the kitchen and then up to the largest bedroom and bathroom, or you can go up into a room with 2 beds and a bathroom.
Jeremy, we are seeing your vertical. We didn't get to see your sectional.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's not moving your presentation.
Apologize. I am going to try to fix this. Apologies.
Maybe you can try stop sharing and sharing again.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Okay. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. What do you see now?
Nothing yet. We cannot see anything.
Okay.
Try again.
Maybe. I apologize. I'm going to try something really quickly. See if that's working.
I suppose we could jump to concept board if that is useful.
That is true. I do have everything on.
Or if you want to, I don't know, like send me your presentation and I would share a screen and I will just pass as you talk.
See. And no.
Yeah, it's not working.
It's not working.
No.
It has the green window around the window. So this should be sharing.
Yeah, I think we should go or to concept board or either.
Yeah, let's go over to concept board.
Okay.
Should I share the concept board screen or?
Yeah, go to concept board and share the screen.
Okay. I apologize for this technical delay. Concept board is a little bit slow. I'm going to try one more time to share.
Yeah, now we see the sectional home.
Oh, now you see the sectional home? Yes.
Yeah, try to
Awesome.
move the slide.
Is it moving?
And maybe go directly to the to our aggregation project. Like.
Okay, great. Do you see the work project up there? Okay, cool. Amazing. So we're just going to start at the integration of the previous projects.
Perfect.
So these previous projects were condensed and then modified to be stacked and organized into vertical cores. I'm going to go in depth on those typologies that are the end result shortly. This is an overview, overhead plan of the current site. And then I actually did visit the site multiple times just because I like French truck. But when I visited the site and I went there, I noticed that the surrounding buildings are mostly kind of 2 stories. So I decided kind of building higher than that would have to be kind of on the inside of the project. And it's not really near water, there's no water features. And I like, water features are good for rain collection, leisure, and a way to cool off in hot weather, such as the weather in New Orleans. So integrating those was a must for me. The objectives of these intentional communities are collective living, leisure, family connection. So my community is mostly for young adults and families that are just starting off, and the integration of water features. So some of my presidents are La Borda in Barcelona by L'École Architecte. I like the ambulatory walkways and how the units were kind of stacked to create verticality. Another example of that is El Gran Vidrio in Badalona by Missouri Architects. The integration of kind of greenery on those balconies and the ambulatory walkways just gives it a really nice clean look. And then Tainan Spring in Taiwan by MVRDV Architects. This water feature is really awesome and kind of for all ages. It's not like a children's splash park. It's a very kind of upscale water feature that I thought is a really nice way to show and present water. So here's my main axonometric again. You can see those 4 main cores, water scattered throughout the project. Here's my first typology. Those 3 wings from the horizontal house were condensed into 3 programmatic parts of the unit. We have the 2-bedroom block on the right, a larger bedroom, and then the public spaces, and all of the wet spaces, the 2 bathrooms, and along with the kitchen are condensed toward the middle of the unit. Typology 2 is 2 sides, public and private. So you have that private bathroom with the beds, and then on the other side is the living, dining, and kitchen area. And then typology 3 with the animation that is working. Having a little trouble getting working, but it's there. And it has the 2 sides, so you can walk in and there's the kitchen and dining, and then there's a small living area with a patio outside, and then farthest is the bedroom and bathroom. And you can see that little animation of the inside parts. So in total, there are 16 large typologies, 16 small typologies, and 28 medium typologies to form 4 cores with a total of 60 units. Here's the overall plan. On the bottom left, you have the first core, top left is the second core, or bottom right is the first core, top right is the second core, top left is the third core, and bottom left is the 4th core. And then here is the second floor plan of those. Once again, they're vertically stacked. And the only difference are kind of modified cores and the public and private features, which we'll go into more detail shortly. Here are the 2 diagrams. You can see vegetation and water features on the site, and then public versus private areas within the cores. So all of the dark gray are public areas within the cores, and the light gray are kind of those private units. So going in depth on core 1, you have 8 units of the first typology stacked on each floor with grids of pathways, covered pathways, and 2 stairwells, one on either side with an elevator, and that's the vertical element, how you get from one floor to another. And yeah, these units are kind of in a grid. And then here's the second floor. Those units are once again stacked. And then at the top right, there's a collective gym space, which connects to the other core via a bridge. Going to core 2, you have a middle courtyard with a water feature. It's all grassy area. Stairs go up starting from the ground up to the 4-foot level, which is where that first ambulatory walkway is. The units are lining the side, and in the back is a picnic area and garden. The second floor stacks that unit, but has a cafeteria type collective eating space that connects to the gym on the other side in core 1. And then on the third level, you have 2 units that have deck and garden access, 2 swimming pools with more deck access, and 2 roof gardens, along with a garden in the back above those picnic areas. Core 3 is pretty much a mirror image of core 2. The only difference would be modified units. So for example, some units have 2 bedrooms as opposed to just 1. Everything else would be the same. Those picnic tables, the gardens, and then the roof area with pools, decks, gardens. And then core 4 at the bottom left, we have those small units, the 2-part units with the living room, public and private spaces, and then outside are patios that are collective for kind of the entire floor. So you have couches, tables, and then the elevator and the stairs that go up to the next floor. This is the second floor, and then on the third floor you have 4 units. And then since I made the point that a lot of the surrounding buildings are only 2 stories, I didn't want to build 3 stories right next to the street. I felt like it would be kind of looming. So I used 2 stories with those roof gardens, and then toward the inside are those extra units with the collective patio space in between. Now onto the sections. This section cuts through that first core, and you can see kind of all the different levels. So there's trees that come from the ground floor up. There are the little patio areas that start 4 feet up and stack because of, and go double height through the units. And then you can see through the units. And then I highlight in the section through core 2, those balconies and those ambulatory walkways on either side. And then in this section, you can see the stacked nature of core 4 and core 1, how spread apart those units are, and you can see the gym collective space and through ordinary units. First perspective highlights the main pool, the main water feature. In the middle of the project, you can see some people interacting, sitting on the side, also a place for children to play. This second one shows an interior view of the courtyard of cores 2 and 3. See those ambulatory walkways. You can see above the bridge on the front side that kind of provides a threshold into that space. And you see someone sitting on the stairs along with someone utilizing one of those picnic tables in the back. And then this third perspective shows a small child playing in one of the water features. Another one of those bridges above to have a threshold into the space, and people hanging out on their balconies. And then you can see in the main axonometric, we have our 4 cores and all of the water features and how they're incorporated into the project. yeah, thank you for listening. And
Thank you, Jeremy. We'll have a shorter feedback from the reviewers because we don't have much time, but I think we have like 12 minutes. So
okay.
thank you.
Yeah, I apologize once again for those small technical difficulties. I'm glad we were able to get it.
Jeremy, I'm just going to jump in with a quick question. Do you imagine that these arrangements are all more or less discrete, that if I live in one typology of unit, that I don't really have much to do with any of the others? The reason I ask the question is not so much to dissect or analyze the design of the individual typologies, but to understand if in your mind there's any relationship, overlap, or community processing through the site as a whole. Because even when I look at this axonometric, the way you've drawn the pools or the water, it all seems like water is an object that occurs discretely in different blocks. But as you know, that there must be a pumping system, there must be a filtration system, there might be a common kind of pool house or a water purification plant. So I'm just wondering how much of this in your mind is episodic and how much of this is systemic, in as much as it facilitates the kind of creation of a community on the site. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I would think that kind of more episodic water features would be the ones, the main like pools on the ground floor. Those are more. I was going for like it would be like rainwater or water that isn't really meant to be like a system like with the pumps and that sort of thing. But I think that the pools at the top of the cores would definitely be have those systems, and I think that anybody can use that lives in any of the cores can use any of the water features. They're supposed to be kind of public leisure points all across the site, and I think that spreading them out kind of makes it easier to access from each core. And yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Jeremy, I appreciate all this, all this work. It also feels like, maybe this is a bad metaphor, but it feels like you're not singing a song, you're putting together an album. And so there's like, one song here and one song here and one song here. And then there's like some water idea. And I feel like in the same way that, if you're listening to an album, a song stops and starts. What am I trying to say? I want these to be singing the same song, not four different songs, right? And so maybe what I would encourage you to do, instead of thinking about, oh, there's this one unit and we just stack them in a serial way and then ring them with circulation, maybe it's about finding one of these ways of circulating and then thinking about how the different units array themselves, plug into this logic. And maybe they don't just stack in a serial sort of way, but you start to, like, if it's the relationship of the circulation around a central courtyard that you feel like is a really animating idea that creates collective community and all this kind of stuff, then maybe we think about ways that you take these different types of units and start to arrange them to make a more cohesive whole, rather than, like stack your pennies here and your quarters here and your dimes here. And I'm kind of intrigued by this guy over here, the sort of the stack that's not just a pancake stack, but starts to have some sectional variation. And so, if I were to move this forward, I might start to investigate that method that you're using there, And like I'm intrigued by those communal spaces you were talking about in between these units. And what I would suggest you doing with those is, if you have 6 units and 4 communal spaces, you end up having a situation where, like, if I live here, I typically just use this space. And if I live here, I use the space adjacent to me. And I think it might be stronger, if you're trying to engender a sense of community, it might be stronger to take away some of those spaces, which will add some sectional variety. Like if you go to the plan of that one, that's type 4, right?
Yeah, and the collective spaces are on the ground floor, so it encourages everyone.
Oh,
to
they're
go
only on the
down.
ground floor.
Yeah, my apologies if I didn't make that clear enough. They're
Well,
on the
then maybe what I would suggest is that, you have a collective space on the ground floor, but maybe get rid of a few of these others. And then when you go up to the next story, you have a collective space that people on that story use. And maybe these spaces are a little bit different from each other in scale or furnishings. And so you start to get a variety of spaces that people could meet up at or congregate at. That might just give each floor a different character and a different sort of like reason to get together.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with Emily's comment regarding this metaphor of the album and not the song. I was going to say I find super interesting though the typology of the corridor with the enclosed garden. Maybe it's because I relate more to it. Actually, it's a typology that is super common here in Spain, and specifically in Madrid. We have a lot from this. They are quite traditional, but I feel you made a reinterpretation that is much rooted in New Orleans' style of life, I think, with this idea of the porches. It's like translating this idea of the enclosed corridor into the porch way of living in New Orleans. We have this typology a lot. Here, the proportion that we have in the houses that share this typology of internal corridor, the proportion is more tending to be a square or even more deep, like to share less wall with the corridor to gain privacy. And you did the opposite. You like stretch the houses, you stretch the units along the corridor, no? It's like you are trying to share more space with the corridor instead of avoiding it. I think because you did that, you got less density, and that's why you needed to compress all the rest of the units, but maybe this is just my reading. But what I wanted to say is that this thing that you did to stretch the house along the corridor, that seems not the ideal option. Maybe it's a super good opportunity to like interweave more the house with the corridor, to research more in this kind of interface between the private and the public. But in this, if you follow this idea, then you have to invest a lot more on this wall, on these doors, on these windows. What is happening there? Are they completely openable in good seasons, or completely closed? Do you have their kind of shared equipment? For example, the kitchen could be there in this interface, and you can share the kitchen with your neighbors, for example. I encourage you to, if you are kind of into this idea of the thresholds and the interfaces between public and private, which I think you are, I will encourage you to look into the architecture of Hermann Hertzberger. I don't know if you heard about him. He was a kind of Dutch structuralist from the 60s, 70s, something like that. And he had a lot of, he showed a lot of care within the details of how the handrail is done so that people can lay onto that, how this glass facade between the public and the private is work at the level of detail so that you can integrate a bench that from the inside it works in some way and from the outside in some another. So I think I'm super intrigued by these typologies that you show, specifically the ones of the corridor, and specifically the opportunities of playing with this super small detail, but super interesting between the public and the private.
And I might suggest too, if that's a typology that you're wanting to use as you're doing it, maybe that water piece that you were so excited about in the beginning with the precedent, with like the children playing, maybe that's a piece on the ground level that starts to unify. Like it could snake between all of these different complexes and start to unify them and give someone an experiential sort of link where they could walk between complexes through this amazing water garden. And so I think you've got some good ideas in here. I just want them to start, I want you to edit a little bit and then connect a little bit.
Okay, so we have 1 minute left. I don't know if.
Yeah, I just want to say something very quickly. I mean, I think that the driver for any design, especially a design that is centered around housing, has to be the inhabitant. I think it would be interesting to know more in your design more explicitly who this is being designed for. So I think for me, what's curious is that you've obviously spent a lot of time, a lot of energy inventing typologies and devising floor plans and creating diversity. But at the end of all of that, I can't really decide who is it for and why are these types of inhabitations needing to be so different? And who are these people? Like, why would I choose one typology over another? Or what is it that it offers me? Is it about mixing, socially diverse groups? Is it about mixing age? And so, there's senior housing and then young families and maybe even, young professionals or single people. I think that it would be nicer if you could have made more clear to us who the eventual inhabitant or the end user is, because at the end of all of this, even with the perspectives, I'm still a little bit confused. Is this student housing? Is this low income housing? Is this middle income housing? And then, how is it that you really need to make 4 different typologies? Could it have been simpler, or would it need to be more complex? So I think that it's just useful as an architect to have a very simple exposition of the foundational reasons for the design to be in a particular way.
Thank you very much for the reviewers. They're really valuable feedback, and also Brandon for being the timekeeper. So I have to leave right now, but another instructor will come to you. So thank you very much. See you in a bit.
Thank you all for the feedback.
I'm here. So Max will be the next student. Max, are you all set?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Take it away.
All right. I think it just, okay. Oh, wait 1 second. Sorry. Hi, my name is Max, and I'm in Professor Norman's section as a second-year undergraduate. For my collective housing project, I focused on cultivating an environment that feels like a small-scale city. I drew my attention towards the center promenade where lots of activities and excitement take place. I attempted to create a delicate, light, and occupiable space on the ground floor with floor-to-ceiling glass panels and steel mullions. The floors above are residential spaces for people living in the units on site. The horizontal home assignment helped me to gather some sense of aggregating the ground and for the collective housing project. I explored creating structures that were accessed not through covered corridors, but by outdoor pathways. The center space is a grass courtyard for gatherings with friends or family. The concept was not to create division, but privacy between family members while still requiring people to convene in the center unit for communal activities. For the vertical home, I explored tying program into the staircase. The vertical home was challenging to work within certain square feet requirements while exploring construction in the vertical direction. For the sectional home, I attempted to vary the opaque and transparent spaces to manipulate the way light interacts with the structure. The idea was to create a flow through the limited space without the viewer feeling constricted or trapped. The porch assignment put great stress on the beauty and importance of the porch in New Orleans. This led me to consider creating spaces like a porch, but possibly more private, especially when developing my collective housing scheme. This diagram is the introduction to the city environment that surrounds the central promenade. The scheme has several entry points into the housing community that all lead to the pedestrian city street. As mentioned before, the ground floor is composed of stores and public spaces to entice the community to visit this location. The circulation has moments where it passes underneath the structure and leads people to the central promenade. There are 4 housing unit types on the first floor. The first unit type has 2 bedrooms and is 800 square feet. This unit has a concrete facade that provides more privacy and space than a balcony. The second unit type is 2 type 1 units facing towards each other, and it creates a large shared courtyard space between 2 units. Unit type 3 is composed of 2 bedrooms to house 3 people and occupies 840 square feet. Unit type 4 is a 1-bedroom, 640 square foot housing space with a shared outdoor space. Lastly, unit type 5 is the smallest space with only 440 square feet, and yet again, a 1-bedroom. Here's the ground floor plan of the site with the central promenade populated with activities such as a swimming pool, volleyball court, basketball court, and picnic space with food trucks and local vendors. Some of the stores and communal spaces on the ground floor consist of a bike store, residential gym, computer lab, laundromat, retail clothing stores, and a plant shop. The cores are accessed from somewhat isolated entrances and do not lead directly onto the main promenade. The residential floors cantilever over the stores by a foot to create visual separation between the spaces. Here's a perspective located in front of the food trucks and faces down the central promenade. Here's a view of the first floor. Arriving on this floor through the core, there's immediately 2 entrances to an interior courtyard and seating space, with the concrete facade being the 3rd wall of the enclosure. There are 3 of these strong, powerful interior courtyards and 6 smaller private outdoor seating on the first floor. The second floor has some slight changes with typology, introducing the 5th unit type. This diagram shows the three main long interior courtyards that are open to the sky and receive light from a neighboring facade. The space in the center of the structure on the bottom left is a void that extends to the ground floor and is open to the sky. This is something that is seen by residents daily as they walk about and return or leave from their homes. This view exemplifies the interior the courtyard I was referring to prior. This section provides some clarity to this interior courtyard space, as well as the smaller, more private spaces for residents to receive sunlight, but not be completely in public. And so here are the storefronts. And then this is the storefronts with the resident units above. Here is a rendered view of the storefronts with what would be glass panes on most likely like steel frames, and they would open up onto the promenade. And that concludes my presentation.
Just to jump in, have you all been typically going into concept board following the presentations, or just providing commentary through the PowerPoint?
We've been doing mostly through the PowerPoint. I don't think we've jumped to concept board yet. Although I might need to for this one.
Yeah, Max, do you want to navigate to your concept board?
Of course, yeah.
Max, there was so much information you were showing. I was having a hard time understanding how the units piece together, but I'm going to concept board on my own to try to find yours.
Sorry, my apologies.
No, I mean, I think it's the nature of all the different unit types and how you're trying to put them together.
It's not really loading for me, but
What you could do, Max, is sort of just let it load, and then you could bring us back to your PowerPoint, and then as soon as it's loaded on your computer, we could switch back to the concept board.
yeah, I'm actually I think I'm gonna just pull up the template because I have it right here.
Oh, sure, that's another good option.
And I think this actually might
There we go. I think it loaded.
Oh, it did? I didn't know it was I didn't know it grabbed it. That's awesome. Okay, here we go.
Could you show us, just so I can understand, like if I lived in one of the top units, can you just kind of walk me through how do I get to
Yeah,
get to
of
the
course.
stairs and go up?
Actually, I might need to not be in full screen mode. Just have to zoom in. Okay, so here are the cores. This is one of the cores. This is another core. And basically you could come from the street side, or you can come down the promenade, and you come off this side like pathway. This is that void I was referring to, where it's basically straight to the sky. You can look up and see the sky. And you go into this unit, into this core. You go up the stairs, and then you're right up these stairs, and this is one unit. This is another unit. Each core accesses 4 units. And then this is that interior courtyard that I had the perspective of, which I can. Okay, sorry. This is the interior courtyard space. So basically, you'd have to go to the core that that applies to your unit. But for this main structure, the 4 cores are kind of all accessible through that open space that is paved.
And sorry, this is really helpful to just hear you do this, but this space here that's open to above, can you show me where that is on the 2nd floor?
Yeah, of course. I apologize. It might look like it's on the floor that you're viewing.
Yep. It's this space here, yeah. Okay.
I just want to jump in quickly and say that of the projects we've been seeing this morning, there's something really quite believable and urban about this one. I very much appreciate the presence of a system. It seems that even the thought and care with which, for instance, something as ordinary as plumbing cores or plumbing stacks are combined, or structural walls or structural armature is easily legible. I mean, I think that there's many readings. There are patterns that are evident in the way that you've arrayed your program across the site. I also think my comment to your colleague before this about the necessity for inventing so many typologies on a site, I actually think your project has really answered my question in a powerful way, where I feel like using the same system, depending on where I am in the site, whether I'm facing a main street or an interior courtyard, or even one of the very private courts within the block itself, you're offering me a real plethora of spatial experience, and a very rich and a kind of carefully scaled set of spatial experiences. So I actually commend you. I think it's a very sophisticated, very competent project. I mean, we can go into the details, but I just want to say it's also beautifully drawn. This is really an elegant site plan. So thank you for that, Max.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree. And the way that these plans layer and have variation in section and more intimate spaces and larger spaces, it's lovely. I think for me, I also appreciate the views that you're developing. They sort of like bring this project to life a bit. And maybe to me, one of the big question marks I have is what does it feel like on the street, like as a neighborhood gesture, or as a, I don't know. I understand the internal experience, and now I want to understand the urban experience of this place. And if you scroll down on the plan that you're showing us right now, it's like, to me, this face it seems a little bit blank, or maybe like it's turning its back to the street a little bit. And so like here as well. And so showing us a view from the street and maybe developing like areas where you open that up or carve away I think is another thing you can do as you develop this strategy. I was very skeptical when you said there would be shops on the inside of the block. And I didn't say anything on the first project, but the idea of markets in the core of a block, I find hard to believe that anyone outside of this housing, anybody that doesn't live there would actually go there. But this promenade you've developed, I could believe it. I could see people going in there for a volleyball game or just to hang out. So you've convinced me.
Awesome.
Yeah, totally agree. It's super urban. It's like you said, okay, we are going towards density, so let's build a really public programmatic activities that can hold this density or that can use this density. So, and I think it's the first case where this is so clear. And I think this is related also to the way you treat this duality between mass and void. As simple as that. It's like saying, okay, I have this super big void or negative space that is super public, and then I will do that in all scales. So you find the same here as well. That is the same thing, but in a smaller scale. And then, well, this is the same, no? This one here.
Yeah, it's a bit smaller, but it is the same.
So
concept.
it's like just half. So what I don't understand is then if this is let's say a void and this is void and this is void, why do you treat it so different? No, why do you close it here? For example, it should be open, right? If you keep your systematic approach, that I really love it, I think the project will benefit from continuing. If this is open, well, this is open as well, and this is open, and you go with it. And then another thing that I saw is, well, actually, this is the same thing, but at the scale of the house, no?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
And this is the same void, so you have a big void for the scale of the block, a smaller void for the scale of the community, and a smaller even block or void for the scale of the house, right?
Those are basically they're kind of like brise-soleils. They have that kind of concrete facade that is maybe my axon will.
Yeah, no, I get it, but maybe what I'm saying is that maybe your project will benefit if you understand everything that is open as permeable, as a void in your project, and not so much because I feel that you are trying to enclose everything in concrete walls, no? And maybe if you play with the duality between something that is closed and private and something that is open, and you continue with this systematic approach between the openness that you treat with glass curtains, openable walls, permeable louvers from wood, for example, and then on the other side, super thick and opaque concrete. I think if you play with the same systematic approach that you play with everything, with the treatment of the facades, the project will benefit. Because when I saw your the unit of the house, I thought, okay, it's quite amazing. You have one private unit on one side, another private unit on the other side, and let's say the public space of the house in between. I thought this could be super interesting. And then if you play with this crossing here a bit more, you could give the whole project a lot of more permeability. But in any case, it's awesome. It's amazing, the project. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I also feel that maybe the dependence on one materiality, the concrete wall, to do everything is not doing justice to, again, the granularity that is evident in your plan. And I agree with Rodrigo that I think that masking or veiling or screening everything with this concrete wall and the punctured openings, maybe you could hold back on the concrete and let there be a little bit more, because I can imagine the breeze and the light really filtering through the verandas or through the brise soleil, coming in through the apartment, and then the breeze exiting through the courtyards. And so there's this wonderful phenomenon of cross ventilation, of hearing sounds coming from someone else's house. I mean, there's many layers on which this kind of community porosity is actually possibly going to work. And I think maybe your material selection can be, a little bit more plural to facilitate that.
Max, I just want to jump in here and congratulate you on a terrific and well-developed project. I'm so pleased to hear these comments and for you to have received this great level of discussion surrounding your project. The promenade is fantastic, and I loved hearing the reviewers believe that the surrounding commercial retail is feasible. I loved hearing the comments about the scheme being quite urban. And so I just want to congratulate you, Max. It's been terrific working with you all semester. And I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you so very much, Professor Norman. That means a lot.
Absolutely. So we're about at time. We do have some time for some more comments if there are any. If not, we will be joined shortly by another instructor, and I will peel off to another room.
I suppose my comment is, I have a really minor one, Max, and that is I appreciate you attempting to diagram where voids are happening and things like that. And I don't know, there's so much complexity to what you've designed that I feel like if you did a few more introductory diagrams at the beginning, it could help us understand the layers and complexity. It could get us up to speed quicker. And so maybe I would suggest thinking about how a small axon diagram with just like a little bit of color layering as you stack your units would be like, that's what's happening here.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think that would help a lot. I think I kind of intertwined a bunch of different units too, so it got really confusing, I feel like. Which wasn't really legible.
But there is a consistency of logic and a really nice series of spaces you're creating. So I think that some kind of explanatory diagrams at the beginning would help make that really evident. And yeah, I think you've done a great job here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Max. And I also appreciated the comment about perhaps including a street perspective. So we understand the porosity from across the street as we approach your development. So we really understand through the imagery and through the drawings that you've produced, the kind of internal energy of the project. But I completely agree, as you archive this project in your portfolio, I would certainly develop the diagrams that Professor Welty is describing. And I would add to that some street views. Okay, so I believe next up is Marielle. Marielle,
thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Max.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marielle, are you close to ready? Great. Well, you might want to give it another moment so Professor Joubert can join. But I would get things prepared. Here she is. Perfect timing. All right, I'm going to peel off. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Rodrigo and Prakash. Fantastic comments. And I will see you all soon.
Thank you, Karin.
Oh, and Rodrigo.
Thank you. How are you all resisting? So whenever, yeah, I think Mariel can take us to her ground.
Okay, everyone can see and hear. Great. So good morning, everyone. And thank you for being here for the presentations of the work from the studio Surrounding Spaces for Human Habitation. I'm Mariel Updegrove, the first year 3.5 dual degree student in the architecture and historic preservation program. I received my undergraduate degree in photography from the University of Vermont, and the past 5 years I've spent in the healthcare field in multiple locations around the country. To introduce the project on the name, Give Me Shelter, the ultimate goal of this core studio is to develop a full urban block using the idea of collective housing. First, 3 different residential home types were developed with the constraints of being no more than 1,200 square feet and needing to provide for either a family of 5 or 5 students sharing the space. I first designed a horizontal home for a family of 5, primed on pairing a 30-degree angle with 2 orthogonally developed separate bedroom-bathroom areas united by the angled common space. Secondly, the vertical home built upwards for 5 students, specifically identifying a core stairwell for circulation and its own public and private spaces. The sectional home became our own hybrid between the horizontal and vertical homes, engaging the ideas that we had conceived previously into a more complex multi-story inhabitants. This design was based on the geometry of the pentagon derived from designing 5 private areas along the perimeter of a central shared space. Lastly, we looked at Palmer Avenue here within New Orleans to acknowledge the porch culture and design elements of the built environment already established here in the city. So looking at the site, the assigned block is block 453 in Uptown New Orleans. These 3 images show the development of the property lines and existing structures of the location, starting from a Sanborn fire insurance map in 1896, then in 1909 in the center, and then on the right, a drawn diagram of the current look of this block. It also was important to acknowledge the existing buildings in the neighborhood, which are primarily early 20th century construction housing types. These include double or single shotguns, which are unique to New Orleans and this region, or this area of the Gulf Coast region. They also include townhouses, bungalows, and all with some East Lake or arts and crafts ornamentation. Of the existing structures, we were tasked to keep 3 through the transition of our new block development. One is a private home residence, and the other 2 are commercial, a French truck coffee house location, and a steakhouse restaurant. The housing complex was devised with the use of 3 housing types designed earlier in the semester, while also conceptualizing the idea of co-housing and how that community would exist in the established neighborhood. As we learned about through research and readings for the course, co-housing communities often are built and have the main structures along the perimeter of the property, and their vehicles are parked outside of this space. Pedestrian walkways then connect the residential locations throughout the interior. The light gray hatch on the ground floor plan shows the absolute public exterior space where the entire neighborhood has access. Commercial space entryways open to this area. Looking at the floor plans, the vertical cores for each main housing building are outlined in red. These provide circulations for residents with a sheltered elevator and stairwell. Paths between the buildings are drawn using the geometry of the pentagonal units within the center. The buildings on this block go no higher than 4 floors due to the height in the surrounding neighborhood, of which most structures are 1 to 2 levels high. The structures with 4 floors are towards the southern side of the block near the large school, where the larger massing can be focused and visually mixes with the established fabric more comfortably. The 4th levels are also set back from the street, so they do not create a confined feeling to the street activity and resemble the typology of the camelback homes in New Orleans, another staple architectural style, where the 2nd or 3rd story is also set back away from the street. Units around the perimeter create a sense of protection for the central courtyard and 5 internal structures. These 5 internal structures in pink are to serve supportive housing for those in need of longer-term temporary housing to be supported by the co-housing community residents. The other colors represent the residential unit types. The light green spaces, or rather I guess sage green, are available for commercial space for the benefit of the collective and the surrounding neighborhood. The developed urban block proposal is then surrounded by this already established neighborhood and hopes to engage it throughout its existence. The 5 structures within the housing collective perimeter would provide units for people in need of temporary housing with a focus on women and single mothers with children. Working with organizations within New Orleans, such as the Family Justice Center and the New Orleans Women and Children Shelter, each structure has a common kitchen and community space on the 1st floor, as well as 3 private units above. The urban block strives to respect the surrounding neighborhood and engage in the community. Some of the commercial spaces to be introduced to the area are a community health center, a laundromat, a pharmacy, a gym, corner market, and a daycare. This co-housing community has a total of 76 total units for rent and 13 commercial 1st level spaces facing the street. The non-supportive housing units each have their own porch or balcony. There are 22 single-level large units of 2 different designs, one based on a combination of 2 floors of the vertical home and one using the geometries of the horizontal home. There are 28 duplex units using the design elements of the vertical home, the only unit with stairs. The small single units jigsaw with the geometry of a large single-level unit from the horizontal home angles. There are 11 of these. When someone emerges from a dangerous or compromised situation, it often leaves the person without somewhere to live or a means to find a job. These units would provide housing and support for a longer time than emergency shelters or interim housing that can provide, which is anywhere from only 30 to 120 days. Not nearly enough time to find a new apartment or job to support themselves. The occupants would only be required to pay 30% of their income, and the rest of the cost would come from portions of rent from the collective housing who live there in choice of helping out the people of New Orleans. The collective housing also qualifies for many federal grants. The supported housing structures would then provide 15 units of housing for this community. Thank you.
I think juries can choose if you want to stay here or go to concept, or you decide.
Well, Marielle, I just wanted to say that I love how thorough your presentation is and how much information you've given us. It helps us understand a lot of the decisions you're making. And maybe one of my biggest questions in considering this proposal is maybe more sociological than anything, which is just like in some ways I appreciate that the design like physically centers the more vulnerable population, let's say, and almost flanks the units, like almost protects the units at the core. But at the same time, I wonder too about, I've read and heard a lot of conversations about how when you segregate different communities, like physically, it's also sometimes stigmatizing, or maybe what some people want is just to be not singled out, but like part of the the regular fabric of a neighborhood or a community or just like a social group. And so I wonder, it seems like you've taken a strong stance, and I wonder if you could just kind of talk through some of your thoughts or feelings about the separation.
For sure. So the hope was that the first floor of these spaces, as you can, I guess, see from the plans, that their individual units don't have kitchen spaces. So they would be encouraged to come downstairs and use a common kitchen space and gathering area, and the kind of perimeter protected housing, I guess you could call it, those do not have like a community space. So it would be encouraged that that's where everyone would gather. But at the same time, their units do put them, I feel that in some ways you do need a little protection and separation, just because it can tend to be a more kind of volatile, traumatic time potentially that you're going through. And so to have that absolute privacy that maybe you do need, but then at the same time, I was hoping for this gathering space that would engage everyone. And at the same time, these people are probably looking forward to the daycare for the uses of the commercial spaces. So they would be additionally engaging with the community that not just they are using, but everyone would be using.
Maria, can you just show us your site plan for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, there. So I just want to say that I'm really intrigued by the kind of the geometric sophistication of this arrangement. I think it would be great for you as a next stage to develop some of these interior perspective views, because I think some of these views across units and across the internal greens are going to be very, very provocative. But I agree with the previous comment, and I just have a slightly different comment. I mean, you're choosing to do two things. One, you're choosing to isolate and encircle and in a way symbolically protect the most vulnerable inhabitants, if I understood your explanation correctly, by encircling them with the more normative units. Am I right in that assumption?
Yes.
But then, given that this is collective housing, it also seems that you're condensing and objectifying all of the most vulnerable people, not only in a very unique geometry, but then also in a very unique configuration of that geometry right in the center. And that's where I feel a little bit less convinced. I think that there's so much site planning sophistication in your strategy that I could very easily have imagined that each one of these pentagons might have just found itself embedded within the larger fabric, or alternatively, that not the entire pentagon would be the most vulnerable housing, that maybe there's a unit on the second floor, another one on the fifth floor, or one in the volume adjacent, but that some of the normative units or the less vulnerable units are interspersed. So in a way, the message, the signaling is very clear that yes, you're being looked after. Yes, there are eyes on you, or in a kind of benevolent way. But at the same time, there's not this black and white duality between who's okay and who needs care. Because in a sense, that almost feels institutional. It doesn't feel urban, right? I mean, the contrast being that the city almost allows you to be cared for, but also to disappear. Whereas when you're institutionalized, you're very much objectified and there's a gaze on you and you're being cared for. And I think there's a little bit of an extreme for me in terms of that. But I think the site plan and the site strategy is really remarkable.
Thank you. But I absolutely agree. Kind of that concept of, do you isolate for privacy and really identifying all of their needs and giving them that separation and space that potentially they need, or providing this integration. And so, yes, I agree that if that's something that was kind of a challenge, and I would like to pursue more and think about more.
But I think your site plan is actually suggesting, because if you look at the end conditions of your normative blocks, the way they start to turn and they twist, they almost feel like they're ready to have a plug and play. They almost want one of these forms to come and attach itself to the ends in a way. So I don't think you're that far, but I just think that maybe the harmonizing could go another couple of steps.
Yeah, I think you took a quite brave approach and quite radical as well. I think it's quite clear that your strategy is like I'm going to build a protective wall, and then that feels or tries to get it quite urban density, and then something inside that is almost like a forest, no, or not urban at all. But then, when you are trying to do this, then you have to go quite radical with it, no? And then when you do these terms here, you start feeling a bit the idea, right? I mean, here is quite clear, here is super clear, here it loses clarity, then here you are doing the same, and you are losing clarity a bit. You are losing a bit the clarity of your diagram, just a bit. But now, one thing that I see super positive is this web of paths that you have here, trying to tie together in a single system both typologies of housing. No? It's like you have this wall outside and then spider web that it's interlacing everything in a single fabric. Now, what I wonder is why this facade here seems so similar to this one here. I know it probably is not like that, and probably you have much more porosity in here at the back, but probably what I will do is to reinforce the strict difference and radical difference, if you want to go in this idea of clear duality, to reinforce this clear duality between an exterior that is urban, dense, solid, and an interior that is like a forest, with terraces, with spaces that are half inside, half outside. Start doing this, that as Pankias was starting to say, you are almost starting to do it right here, and trying to deform these solid pieces into something more organic. If you apply these kind of strategies to all the interiors, then the tying together of the outside fabric and the inside will follow a more coherent approach, and actually will follow the web approach that you are almost trying to build on the ground floor. So what I'm trying to say is how high in the levels can you go with this web approach? I mean, at the moment it's only pavement, right? But how many levels could you go with this logic of the web?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point in that sense that it will be almost like you're creating a gray space. No, you have a black wall, a white web, and then a series of gray transition zones from the outside to the inside, if I understand well. No? And that might be repeated as well in section, no? As a way of coping with the social architecturally in a way.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think also, I mean, the Pentagon, I don't know, the Pentagon are spirals, no? They're like not solid from the bottom up, no? They're like spiral. And I think that's not perhaps totally perceived in the perspectives, but they disappear also from the ground up somehow.
Yeah, I mean, part of me really loves that. I think those internal units might even feel like tree houses as you're walking through them and occupying them. And I kind of like this idea that it seems almost magical to be in this protected space amongst the tree canopy. But then there's another pragmatic part of me as a mother of small children that's like, oh, they're gonna kill themselves if you get too high. But no, I do want to commend you just on your depth of thought, and you're really like, you're not thinking just about the the physical space, but also the programming and how you can have these synergies between, you know, like you need a daycare on site and you need these other things. And I think there's you're showing a real maturity in the way that you're thinking about these spaces and how everything is interconnected. Like if we're if we're trying to support each other, it's not just about creating a great home, but it's about all the other pieces that people need to thrive.
I think if there's one other thing I just wanted to add, I think when I look at your site plan, I think there's so many amazing sectional possibilities with the ground plane. I mean, I know that, you know, as Rodrigo was saying, that the axialities are being, you know, layered with the diagonals, and the diagonals feel like they have another set of governing logics. But I also feel like there's something about the way even that you're drawing the site plan that makes me feel like this shouldn't be a flat center, that there's steps and then there's level changes, there's paths, that there's maybe like gathering spaces or even you know, a grove or a pond. There's something about the way that the site is drawn that almost demands that, you know, maybe that's also a way of ascending up to some of the units on the upper levels, that you don't necessarily just go up the stairs.
And that is absolutely something that we at least discussed and I would like to pursue, because at least within New Orleans, part of just design is that the commercial spaces can be flush with the ground, but that the residential spaces in the back need to be at least, it's like 3 to 4 feet off the ground, just due to flooding and water issues within the city. So these sort of like backspace porches are all elevated, but that kind of then like takes you away from you're kind of like up on this pedestal almost. Maybe that's the wrong word to say, but you're elevated in this awkward way. And so we have discussed at least like kind of this like sort of undulating flow of maybe rising up into the back and elevating that space, so that these homes that are facing the interior kind of rise from the perimeter of the commercial spaces on the sidewalk.
Perhaps you can show sectional.
So, I mean, for a section here, just to explain it, like, I mean, I guess if I were, I sort of drew this, some of the homes, you can see that these are where the commercial space is directly kind of flush with the area, but all homes in New Orleans, you're always kind of rising up and walking up to the doorway. And I mean, that also goes along with why porch culture is so important, that those exist. So when you're then going from this commercial space then to a residential space like this, you are always having to walk up. So if I go back even to address like the internal core, I had to take that into consideration. This isn't actually within the core, because you're entering on the ground level, but then to get to the backspace, you have to rise up that 3 or 4 feet here within the core. So initially you're coming in, here's the elevator, here would be like a commercial space, but then initially then you have to take these 4 steps up to then get to the level of and where the residential space is. And then you can continue with the core, and then to get back down, and then you have to come back down again. Yeah, I guess changing the grade, changing the elevation of where you are within the space could be cool, and actually having that like undulating feeling of walking up and being level with all the spaces, but then potentially having this like rolling hill to come back down for this common green space in the center was something that we had discussed.
I think it would also be really great for you to spend a little bit of time looking at the elevations of your building. I mean, I don't have a sense of the materiality, and I don't have a sense of how beyond this single block, if I'm walking down the street and I've walked by 4 or 5 blocks and I come across your block, am I going to be startled? Or am I going to be pleasantly surprised? Or am I going to have something to hold on to from the previous blocks and something totally new that confronts me? So I think that level of weaving this typology and this language with materials and a kind of strategy for, there's an accountability that your project is definitely demonstrating within the site. And I'm just wondering about its accountability on an urban level to the street. And I think that would be really interesting to see as well.
Yeah, and perhaps your material choices can echo your partie, where the outer edge or the street edge is one sort of material that's a little more, I don't know, like tough or rigid, or like it's the shell, and then the inner pieces are something that's more organic and inviting. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way, but like you can find ways in which you're deploying materials to reinforce the larger agenda of the project or the strategy that you've got when you're approaching the site.
I mean, something I thought about just like stuccoed buildings they're just such a key component of architecture here in New Orleans, and potentially, I mean, even if the entire structure was stuccoed, the scoring of the stucco to kind of create this look of like gigantic blocks, especially you can see that like within the French Quarter, just the way that you detail the stucco could make it go from looking like blocks on the exterior to, if you left it kind of rough and textured, look softer on the interior.
Sure, there could be something there. I mean, I think also with stucco, there's a lot of, you can do a lot with color as well.
Yes.
And I don't know if, I feel like thinking about color in this strategy could really make things pretty wild, pretty fast.
It's New Orleans, so it would work.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of a lot of our neighborhoods, is just how much fun people have with color. And
and maybe at the center it disappears, no? Maybe it's like inox, or I don't know, or like something like camouflage into the trees. Okay, it looks like we have some more minutes before a couple of minutes.
I'll just say, since we have to fill a little bit more time, I think also as you consider materials and the next level of development, I think you can reinforce some of your social agenda as well, because if, like, when you said plaster, I started thinking about the history of lath work and plaster work in the city, and particularly how it's tied to Creole traditions and really like building up a Creole class of craftsmen, and there's just like generations of families that are like master plasterers, and so you can start to think too about how you're reinforcing local craft and tradition in your material choices and specifications, and really playing into the craftsmanship that comes with it if you're talking about texturing and patterning. And so I think those are good ideas to explore as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you everyone so much.
Thank you. So we can lead into next. I'm leaving the room, so thank you so much.
Hi, should I mirror my screen?
I think we have a few minutes, but I guess you can get your presentation ready. Who's your instructor?
Sonsoles.
Oh, great.
Hi, Rodrigo. How are you? Emily,
Hello, Sansal.
what's happening?
We finished the last one a few minutes early, and so I think
Okay,
everyone's
it's a
taking
break. Okay.
yeah, everyone's taking a minute to answer an email.
I was thinking maybe my screen is frozen.
No, no.
Okay.
Sonsoles, how is it? Is it crazy jumping around, or is it?
It's really fun.
Yeah.
Because you don't miss your student. It's just you're jumping, and it's a little bit stressful at the beginning, but once you run to the second room, that's fine.
Yeah.
But also for the judges, you have plenty of different styles, and sometimes some instructors, we have a kind of a style, and maybe it's I don't know, repeated along several projects or not.
Yeah. Well, all right, Lauren, I think you can start.
Okay, one sec. Okay. Hello, my name is Lauren Leroff. I am a second-year undergrad, and my professor is Sonsoles. The task of creating a community from the previous projects this semester, coupled with the location and liveliness of New Orleans, resulted in using the horizontal house from first semester, which has a focus on airy spaces being divided by a tangential circle to outdoor windows. I wanted to create a community that allowed for the tightly packed constraints of community housing to still have great ventilation and outdoor lights and spaces that framed views towards the center of the courtyard and trees, while also being aware of like the neighboring areas like the school and the coffee shop. This is the horizontal. The design progression of the artist's palette, stemming from the main light sources and tangential circle of the horizontal home, creates different typologies of the units created, and they're flexible and create different atmospheres and moments for varying sizes and families and roommates. When aggregating the units, the large ones were mirrored and flipped to create different light wells and spaces and put on the outer edges of the blocks, where the smaller, less orthogonal units were on the inner edges, and removing one or two in each created isolated stairs and moments, and also experiential balconies. The mirrored light wells. The mirrored light wells allow for each unit to create or get their own windows and light, with which no one can get close up to in the corridor, and it allows for a greater sense of privacy. And while the ground floor is a series of isolated moments pertaining to the program, it's open to the public and has an abundance of free space. The stairs itself are isolated to keep the public out of the more private parts. And the sections aim to show the public and private moments in these spaces. Thank you.
Can you do me a favor again, as someone else, as we did in, who was it? Can't remember which project it was, but could you just walk us through, like, you've just arrived home and now you're going up to your unit?
Yeah, of course. So you just arrived home and you're going up to your unit based on whether you're one of the larger blocks or one of these smaller off blocks. You have a direct path, usually straight to the stairs. You can go this way. There's many like forms of access or access points within these units. There's the elevator and then the stairs, which you can go up to. And to get through those units, there you go into like an interior space that through these doors where there's a little bench, like an area that you can just wait for someone or put something down. And when you arrive at the top of these stairs, you arrive into these open balconies and experiences that have different panels and trees, and you can see into the main courtyard or space below. And when you're getting actually into your unit, these are the corridors in which you access these individual units or places. And these are all light wells right here. So you walk kind of around these. It's a fairly straight path. And you can never get close up to someone else's window or personal space. And everyone can get a lot of natural light.
Yeah, thank you for that. I you know, as someone who builds a lot of my projects, I would not want to build this. The curves would be difficult, but I do think spatially you're creating a pretty rich, interesting experience. And so, so as long as I don't have to build it, I'll go along with it. And I guess what's curious to me is, you know, I appreciate seeing the ground floor again because it's much more porous than I had imagined, and I think that there's something kind of nice about this ground plane you've established. What feels anticlimactic is this little thing you've stuck at the middle. I don't know if that's a pond or a sand pile or.
It's a pond.
It's a pond. I feel like you've gone through a lot of effort on the ground floor to create this, you know, like really porous, interesting, like light well filled entry sequence, and the payoff isn't there for me yet. Like I want you to spend a little more time developing the ground floor. And also while you're at it, think about some sectional variation you could have with like everything's really stacked right now, and I want to dissolve some of the upper floors to start to open up, you know, both more light and create a little bit of variation in section. So they're not just, right now it feels like this plan, the top 3 floors have been smushed through a Play-Doh extruder, and I want to start to carve at them a bit.
Yeah, I think you show a lot of sensibility carving the volume or molding the volume. And I think the result is kind of sophisticated. It reminded me a lot to some projects of Sejima or Nishizawa, where you don't know how do you enter, and suddenly you are in the middle of a maze of reflections and curtains and shadows and light, and you don't see the exterior, no? I get that what you did was to take the concept of your patio, of your horizontal home, no?
Yeah.
That was super strong, super radical. You did like, okay, I'm going to build a super thick wall and then have some perforation so that from the outside is everything opaque and blind, and from the inside is this maze of reflections and light and shadows and veils. Now, I get that you took this unit and you said, okay, now I'm going to do collective housing with that. Now, when you do this, one option of doing it is saying, can you put the next floor or any of your typical floors? Yeah, this one. So one thing of doing is saying, okay, so I will just pile together my horizontal houses like that, bam, 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 and I get it. Another thing that it seems what you did is to use this way of carving the volume, carving the mass and opening voids, and do a mass. But then the thing is that you have the same patio house here, right? This is also your patio house at another scale, no? And these are your voids, which I don't know if you are taking in consideration. I mean, this is a bit like, I feel that you are doubting on this. I mean, your patio house is here at the scale of the block, or is here at the scale of the unit, or is here at the scale of the whole section of the building. I feel you are kind of doubting between and jumping a bit between one of these three modes of understanding, and they could lead you to super different projects. For example, for me, if you have this logic or this idea, for me it's super strange that the house has the same time of treatment towards the street than towards the corridor, no? And you're playing with these units, just flipping them, mirroring them. And for me, this is super difficult to explain, because the atmosphere that you have here is super rich, super mysterious, super intricate, and super different from the one that you have here, right? So this is one of the things that I see more clear that there's failing in the metaphor. But otherwise, the atmosphere that you are trying to convey is super powerful. I think you need to work a bit more on the details so that it's kind of believable. And the first one that I will do is to do this, to treat the house differently, looking on the inside and looking at the outside. And as soon as you start doing this, you will realize that this phase here is super important, the way you treat it. Right? I don't know if it has to be straight as you did. Maybe it's a good decision, but in any case, the interfaces that you have here, the devices that you put here, will be super important. No? Is this opaque? Is this openable? If you play them as thick walls that can open or close, and that they protect at the same time that they can open, sadly, you have the question of, okay, so this line of interface that you have here is the same as this one, and how different it is, and is the same as this one, and how different it is. Maybe you have to think on three kind of treatments: one that is outside, one that is in the middle, the same one here, and then this one that is should be totally different, I think, no? So I will understand your project, having understood this idea of the voids and the patios and the halls of light and the veils, etc., transparency. I will understand your whole project as trying to develop these three super different styles of veils at the constructed level, almost at a super small detail.
Lauren, can you zoom into one of the unit plans?
Yeah. Let me see this. I can also. Okay, one sec. I'm sorry. There we go.
Yeah, so I think that's great. I think this is it. Actually, seeing the plans in close up actually confirms the question I wanted to ask. So I think that, you know, there's something quite compelling for me when I look at your site plan. I mean, you're making the equivalent of the modern day Bernini or Borromini, you know, San Carlo, and there's this very fluid form. There's a kind of cosmic quality to the completeness of that form. You're doing it at different scales to show that your project has this kind of attitude towards the center. where each unit plugs in. There's a kind of aggregation and then the kind of recognizable thumbprint or fingerprint. But I think this is the problem for me, is when I look at it as a unit, I find it deeply unsettling. I find it kind of, as compelling as I find it on the macro level of the site, I find each of these rooms quite strange and bizarre in a way that, the bedroom with the curved wall that kind of encroaches in, or the bathroom where, you're not going to get a plumbing fixture to meet that curve just in the right way. So I'm just wondering, like, what is the payoff of extending this geometry to the interior of the unit versus using it as something more urban or something to create more of that language, the graphic typology of the courtyard versus the threshold wall? What's the payoff? What are you getting out of this on the inside, I guess is my question.
I think when I start looking into some of these smaller units in which I broke off, let me zoom out. So I think when I start, I think when I start looking at these smaller units here, I see exactly what you mean. I think I might have lost direction a little bit in that sense. Creating these different sizes and moments resulted in dividing spaces in some pretty odd or awkward ways. I know that the payoff for the horizontal home, or the original space and intention, which I tried to carry through the project, was to create a space in which you're spending a majority of your time in these common spaces where these circles or tangential circles were. And I think that they were supposed to divide the space from public and private space. So if you can see, like, this is the public and these little moments here are the private.
I know, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that on the intimacy level of the individual apartment, if these curves were recessed tracks for curtains in the ceiling, or there were a series of veils that just allow you to partition and segregate private space into even more small private space modules, that's one thing. But the minute they become masonry walls and they become cabinetry and they become solid, it starts to be problematic. So I feel like that, the payoff of the geometry on the interior is quite different from perhaps your ambition or your aspiration. And I agree with Rodrigo's comments that I think the attitude to the site as a whole on the interior facing the courtyard, where these forms are more prolific, is quite distinctly different from the exterior, where there has to be perhaps a more defensible envelope or a more formidable, tougher skin in a way. So I think just clarifying those would be really great, because I think you've come up with a very thoughtful, very intelligent system. It's just a question of understanding all of the implications of the system and then modifying or simplifying sometimes to the point where it can be replicated quite seamlessly.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
I also have a small graphic suggestion, which is, if you're going to invest a lot of time and energy into if one of the big ideas is that the curve animates the common space, or I don't know if I'm hearing you right, but I think that's something you said, then perhaps what you do when you show us a plan of either a unit or the larger whole is that you you would never have, whatever. This feels so minor, but like in my mind, I would never put my people in the private space. They would all be out in the public space, in the space that's supposedly like animated and wonderful and terrific. And you would see, you would put more visual effort into making us believe those spaces and feel like we're inhabiting them. and that may be about color, it may be about figure, I don't know what, but even if you go to your site plan with you know, all the units together, not the ground floor, maybe like second or third floor. Yeah, these spaces. I also want to understand how these like crazy, weird, idiosyncratic spaces, how people are occupying them. Like I want to see furnishings, and I want to see life, and I want to see people having a barbecue. Or
well, I was trying to convey that in my perspectives a little bit. You want me to show you those?
Yeah, sure. Right. Yeah, I mean, that definitely helps.
Yeah, but it's true that, Lauren, you need to represent the same that you are showing us in your perspective on your floor plans, right?
Yeah.
And the motion exploded axle, what is it?
One sec, it's not playing.
It's not playing? Okay.
I don't know why it's not playing. One sec, escape. Sorry. It says cannot play media. I'm sorry, I have no, it says it cannot play media.
Okay, I will allow you, Lauren, to write down all the feedbacks, because I think that they have made a really interesting feedbacks, and also complete your project. Okay. You have a weekend to complete your project before Monday. That would be nice. To apply all the suggestion and all the feedback, you know? And also you will agree with them, so. Do you have any other feedbacks, Emilio Rodrigo Panca? Because I think that we have 6 minutes, otherwise we need to move to the room 0, and probably we need to wait there. So.
I would really love to see some elevation drawings. I really think that, you know, what I sense is happening is that the plan is just being extruded vertically. And so there's no real deviation from the plan on any floor. And I think if you force yourself to draw some of the elevations, you realize that maybe it's suggesting that the plan might need to modify from floor to floor. For some reason, I feel like even these cutouts or the voids or these elliptical shapes, they just go up in the same exact dimension vertically. But there could be something, because it's on a facade, it faces a certain particular avenue or a certain building across the street, that form might expand or constrict, or even the voids inside the building might funnel in or funnel out, depending on what you're trying to do. So I actually feel like, you know, a couple of sections and elevation drawings will be really useful in advancing the project.
Okay, I'm going to put on the chat the room 0 for conclusion, and also to thank you all. So we're going to meet all together, all the reviewers, students, and instructors with Margarita. So see you there. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren.